everyone, welcome back. All right, we are finally here in our data warehouse series. So I'm going to refer to this as the data-driven architecture series or data strategy series, or I might even change it to data policy management. That's the primary focus as we get into machine learning, AI, big data, and data science itself. Right, so I've covered a great deal prior to getting to this particular subject area. In the Model-Driven Anything series that we kicked off everything, we focused on the front end. But since then, over the last almost year, we've had to cover quite a bit of dependent conversations in order to accomplish understanding everything that I'm going to be talking about. So I'll include links. This also is learning Spark 17 that we started a few months ago, how to get started in that. And part of our My First series, a different playlist, it's pretty much anything that's My First is in this playlist. And there's a lot of materials such as legends, asset repository, stereotypes, and much more. So I'll include links down below to these playlists in case you get lost on any particular area, and I'll try to focus on particular videos that are relevant to the conversation in each part of this series as we move forward. So we're going to dip into our asset repository. We're going to focus on data warehouse, microservices, cloud, particularly data management, security, governance, and data, and much more. But we go to some primary artifacts that we use, some block diagrams that we're going to use for this conversation as we progress. For our demonstrations, we're going to be using our fictitious company, Ourco, and the architecture that we're implementing for this company. So in this, I've built out a cover page that brings in the necessary building blocks that we're going to be using, the responsibilities of each one of those systems within the architecture. We'll also be using a custom draw presentation slide using the exact same elements and their global unique IDs to have conversations throughout the series. We then build out our block diagram for our solution architecture, where we're going to be focused on everything relevant to data. This includes all of the tag values that are relevant to each one of these applications, as well as the responsibilities of those applications as we move forward in our data strategy design. And then we're going to get to data warehouse itself. And within data warehouse, we have data management patterns that we use, that we have to think about the architecture as we're implementing it, the data layers that are involved in data orchestration and the workflow layers, the interactions between these various layers as we're delivering the architecture, talking about the architecture, collaboration, and all of that. I use this Venn diagram in simple conversations with non-technical stakeholders to show how the architecture intersects with each other from a Venn perspective. And then we're going to get into the approaches, the architecture platforms, and tools that we can use applicable to each one of these layers within our proposed architecture strategy. As we get into the other parts in the series, we may get into component architecture relevant to our data strategy and our conversations. This includes how the deployment view may look like as we work between the various actors and the systems that are involved. Then I'm going to make sure I have a conversation. I might do this in part 2 around the progression of analytics, especially when we're talking about advanced analytics. So I've covered this before, but in the progression, we have hindsight, and this is basically an understanding of what has happened. We have insight, and this is why did it happen as we're looking and processing the data. And we have the most important part of machine learning AI, the predictive analytics. This is the foresight. We're here where we're looking at, or the history, everything that's happened in the first two progressions, and forecast future activities. I want to say predict. So this is the predictive analytics part. And then we get to the outcomes, the prescriptive. And this is controlling what will happen, steering what will happen, guiding what will happen as we're using our data to drive our objectives. And along the way, we are going to be building out data science architecture. So we're going to look at and we're going to break down our block diagram and everything relevant to our data strategy and apply the various tools and platforms in order to accomplish our objectives. So let's get started in this first part and see how far we can go. So what is a data strategy? A data strategy is a blueprint for how an organization collects, stores, manages, and uses data. It supports everything from business intelligence, or BI, to machine learning and AI-driven insights. Without a structured approach, organizations struggle with data silos, inconsistent analytics, and poor decision-making. By modeling a data strategy in Spark's Enterprise Architect or many other tools, we create a visual roadmap for data architecture. So why model a data strategy in UML? In this case, I'm using partitions from our activity diagrams, and then I use class elements within those partitions to understand the flows. In UML, or the Unified Modeling Language, this helps us visualize the structure of data flows, governance models, and architecture components. Using Spark CA, we can drive data governance policies using class diagrams, data process workflows using activity diagrams, and system interactions in sequence diagrams. So as we've learned in the channel, what we're going to be doing is starting with some use cases, responsibilities, and some basic requirements. We're going to start building out some scenarios so that we can auto-generate activity diagrams and sequence diagrams. We'll use our class elements for context, as you've learned in the channel, as we work through the design. In this series, we're going to briefly touch on how to start a project in Sparks for this use case, all right? I've shown you how to bring in block diagram using your XMI imports, or you can bring in your assets from your asset repository. So when we're starting with a block diagram, we have a legend pattern. I've shown you how to do this. And you can carry on conversations like, I want to understand the effort that's taking place within the architecture. I want to show the effort with the connectivity between the assets that are in here. And we can delete this and we can bring in other things like data strategy. So we bring in a legend that we created for data strategy that helps us understand where the various platforms are, the layers in our architecture, and how they interact within a particular block diagram, enterprise architect, or your general model itself. In this series, you're going to learn how to move data from source systems as we get into our particular models to the warehouse itself. And we're just going to refer to this side as the data warehouse itself, whether that's local in your data center, and there's going to be a need for that for privacy and data protection perspectives, as well as your cloud data for more scalability, service, and integration with other providers as you're going forward. We're going to learn about data transformation and aggregation processes as we use various toolings between the front-end applications, the service layer, the front-end applications, which are here, and the service layer into wherever your target is for your data, your processing. Because processing can take place, as you see in this legend here, anywhere. It can take place in the applications. It can take place in the networking, the data processing itself across your connections, and anywhere. So we're going to talk about how to strategically do that to achieve your various performance objectives. And we're going to focus on data policy management, right? Discoverability and everything that's necessary for metadata management and governance as we're delivering our architecture. So we've got a lot to cover here over, I want to say, a short period of time. I'm going to be publishing every Tuesday because this is an advanced subject as we progress through the architecture. So we have a lot to cover, and I look forward to jumping into that with you. Please take screenshots anywhere you want. Post comments and questions down below. Ask some questions as we're moving through this. I'll be checking in on those between publishing events and YouTube, and I'll try to get back to you or cover that in the section. It depends on how much time I have, because I have a lot of other jobs that we're working right now. I'm trying to make sure that our data is clean and I'm not exposing any proprietary information from companies that I'm working with, but we'll see what we can do as we're going through this together. So until that next episode, happy modeling.